I'm the project manager for the Pathways programme that's been underway in Hampshire County Council for about 9-10 months now. It's been supported through the Community Renewals Fund, which is central government funding that Hampshire applied for in partnership with Community Energy South. So we've been providing in-depth support to 5 groups, community energy groups across Hampshire. Some, like Energy Alton, were already established, and the other 4 were in various stages of development. So we've been working with them to help develop and refine sort of startup or new business plans, helping support through new funding opportunities and possibly new services, and being able to provide feasibility assessment for new sites. It's been a really great programme. Really grateful to Hampshire for their support, and we're in discussion about how we can continue that support after the programme ends. Later in the programme, I think today we'll be talking about a quite innovative new funding stream that Hampshire County Council have developed to support projects, capital projects. So I think Nicola's going to allude to that later. Please ask any questions, put them in the chat, and we'll discuss those at the end. So the first speaker today we have is Nicola Davidson, who's a Community Energy South mentor, but also a director of Made Energy, and she and John Taylor from the Net Zero Hubs, Southeast Net Zero Hub, will be talking about the different stages of project development and fundraising and the different sources that are available. So over to you, Nicola.
Thanks very much. Good morning, everyone. I will just share my screen so you can start seeing my presentation. Here we go. Is that coming through?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. I'm going to talk to you today about how to fundraise for your community energy projects. As Laura said, I'm a community project manager with CES. I've also got a fundraising background and long-term board member of Made Energy Community Benefit Society in Berkshire and North Surrey. My role is to support with business planning, pipeline of project development and funding. And we have people here today with different levels of experience and project readiness. So if you need explanation on anything we're saying, please do put it in the chat, because there are no daft questions. There's such a range today. Thank you. Just trying to put my next slide on.
And also, can you speak up a little, Nicola?
Sure.
You've got a very gentle voice and you seem to be coming over rather quiet at my end, so it may be the same with everybody else.
Thank you. I'm just trying to move my slide on. It's not working.
Oh.
Here we go. In general, I'm going to talk about action which reduces energy need and action which generates energy. So I'll be talking about fundraising for those two areas. Okay, next slide. Nope. Yeah, here we go. Action which reduces energy need. At the moment, I see 2 options for smaller community energy projects: urgent response and longer term response. And for example, energy champions, draft proofing, that sort of thing. An urgent response now will be hard to quickly find decent money for. And I think a lot of groups are racing around trying to address the current problem we've got with the energy bills. I suggest going low cost with your approach by enabling people to help themselves, rather than you as an organisation, as a group, gathering volunteers, trying to train them up quickly, fixing the safeguarding and finding the right homes to deliver in. So you might like to put on high street events, giving out silicon guns and radiator reflectors, along with guidance sheets and YouTube links to enable people to help themselves. You could try seeking low-level funding for this through local councils, chambers of commerce and other community groups, your local Rotary and social media appeals, because you're not going to need a lot of money for that. You could even borrow a gazebo, borrow a trestle table, that sort of thing. And make those silicon guns and so on free with small amounts of funding. Then I suggest using those high street interactions to ask people what they need from a local project and if they want to help design it. And this is really good as a foundation for future funding bids. It's good preparation involving people, establishing truly what the community need. For longer term response projects, plan what you can realistically deliver and who to partner with to avoid overlap, and ensure the information on grants and subsidies that you might want to share to people is accurate and that you're not duplicating anything. And this might be, for example, a proper draft busting team if you can gather the volunteers, or a low cost handyman scheme. Decide how you'll reach certain groups, and that might be defined by low income groups, people with certain health issues, frailty, language barriers, for example. And for this, it's ideal to find groups which already reach those kind of people well and partner up with them. Perhaps they'll even have greater eligibility for charitable grant funding from local community foundations, charitable trusts, and other pots. But the high street interactions will help enormously. I've got some examples on the screen there. We've got Community Energy Colchester. I'm not sure if you can see the logo there because I've put that in the front. Community Energy Colchester in Essex, Saffron Walden Community Energy in Essex, two brilliant projects that are going on there for draft busting. And then there's the Draft Busters logo at the bottom, which is a group in Reading, which I highly recommend having a look at their materials. There are, of course, options for larger energy saving projects, such as proper retrofitting and the Energy Local scheme, which is fantastic, and all sorts of district heating schemes that are coming up. But those, of course, need a bit more planning. Next, funding action which generates energy. There are various renewable energy types, of course, but I'd recommend duplicating what others have done and then aligning that with your local priorities. So copy what's already out there. Have a look at Community Energy England, Community Energy South, our own website, and the Carbon Copy website, which is UK-wide as well. Find ideas that are similar to your aspirations. For concept stage funding of your group, talk widely with local groups who may be in a better position to leverage a bit of startup funding, such as your parish council, local charities and CICs. And then if your group is at project design stage, investigate how your plans fit into neighbourhood plans and your local authority net zero plans, and try and use that as a catalyst and evidence of need. Get your council interested in your plans, as they may well incorporate your costs into the community infrastructure levy funding that might be available, or more strategic funding bids, as you'll help them meet their targets by partnering with them. I think that's really important. Local area energy plans are coming through your district network operator, and they could present strong opportunities for community energy as well. Now, in terms of bidding for funds, we're going to be talking a lot about this today. This depends on what sort of organisation you are, whether you're a charity, a community benefit society, a governing local authority, for example. If you're not eligible for a fund that you've noticed, consider partnering up with an organisation who is eligible. Maybe even another energy generation group could work with you. Again, have a look at the Community Energy England map or talk with us at CES. A council could help a community energy group to bid if it meets their priorities in what you plan to do. A charity could enable community group activity through funds that they could access. If you're a charity, you may struggle to attract funds which represent more than the financial history you can demonstrate managing in the past. You may need to have stronger governance. If these sorts of factors limit you, consider working with a group that is strong at the things that you might not be quite as strong at. Consider framing your project from a cohort perspective to appeal to certain funding types, ethnicity, age, geography. That could work well by collaborating with other groups that aren't even nearby, learning from their best practice. You know, a project emerging in Somerset that benefits from activity that's worked really well in Manchester. All sorts of possibilities could be relevant. Going on to types of grant funding, look at Community Energy England, their grant database. It's free and it's comprehensive and maintained and very much focused towards community energy. It's really great. Local councils often provide access to the expensive IDOCS database. It's really good. I know Dorset County Council provide this for groups in that area, and check out what your authority does. And if they don't provide it, ask them to, because it would be a great platform to enable their groups to find out what's out there. And then charity excellence. This is a free resource for hunting out new funds. It emerged during COVID. It's really great. I don't think you have to be a charity to link up with it, but they've got all sorts of tools which will help the resilience of your organisation as well. And John is going to talk about more business related funding and strategic opportunities after I've spoken. Last slide is rising to current challenges. Now that tariffs, incentives and Rural Community Energy Fund have gone, I really would urge you to start thinking about larger projects based on multiple sites, on new roofs, for example, projects which have high on-site energy consumption, longer term opportunities for power purchase agreements with the occupier, the freeholder, for example, partnering with others, and then large financing options which could be available to local authorities. The large generation projects could be solar or leisure centres run by your local authority, industrial estates, shopping centres, any high energy use, large modern roof space that you could secure long-term power purchase agreement with. And we've got lots of examples we can share with you. Certainly in Made Energy, the group I help run, we have PPAs with our local authority for leisure centres, and it works really well. And some state-owned schools as well as the academy schools. Your project could really benefit right now from the higher purchase prices that occupiers are likely to be happy to pay. Of course, you're going to link them with the ebbs and flows of energy prices, so it'd be a case of modelling that. Economies of scale are crucial. We ran a great webinar in the summer about scenarios which are ideal for solar projects. You might want to work jointly with councils or even corporate renewables companies who can access bond financing for shared projects. John is going to explain more about that shortly. And if you've shared your ideas widely in your local area and you've worked out where they align with others, you could well line yourselves up for large financing through funds that your council could access, such as the Shared Prosperity Fund. And again, I'm not going to steal John's limelight for that one because he's got a lot more detail on that than me. I hope that's been useful. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Nicola. I just want to reiterate what Nicola said at the beginning, which is that there'll be people here on all sorts of stages of the community energy journey. You know, some of you will be completely new to this, and some of you may have been doing this for 10 years. And it really is, no question is too simple or basic. So, you know, obviously there's going to be lots of experts asking quite challenging questions, but please do feel free to ask any, you know, all questions are welcome. Everyone's welcome. One of the things about community energy is it's about enabling people and communities who don't have experience of these things, who haven't experienced this before, and that's what we are here for, to enable you and move you forward. So please feel free, don't feel intimidated, ask whatever questions you want. And now I'm going to hand over to John, who's been cleverly getting ready while I've been talking.
Right, good morning everybody. Yeah, thanks for coming along to this session today. Is that volume okay for everyone? Great, okay. Right, so I work for an organisation called the Greater South East Net Zero Hub. We're funded by BEIS, the government's Energy and Climate Change Department. So we're a public sector team and we work all across this region, including Hampshire, as a kind of extra resource for local authorities and community energy groups to draw on to help accelerate the delivery of local energy and net zero related projects. So yeah, I personally cover south of London, like Sussex and Kent, parts of Hampshire as well. And we've got colleagues that cover this whole area. Also, there are similar teams existing in all regions of England. So wherever if you're coming from the Northwest or the Midlands today, then there will be equivalent people in these roles where you are as well. So certainly we would like to be a resource for the community energy sector as well. If you need to find the right people in the council to talk to about a project, then we'll certainly in the southeast, working with 140 plus local authorities. So yeah, we can always help make connections on that front as well. So I'm going to cover the various stages of community energy projects and the various pieces of funding that we are aware of that link with each one of these. Previously, we've been administering the Rural Community Energy Fund for the government, which was it covered the first two phases here, feasibility and project development. So we've got a bit of experience in this space. So just going through this process here then. So starting off, it's pretty common for a community energy scheme to materialise from a kitchen table meeting or a pub or wherever you meet as a group. So this is often the beginning. You've got an idea of what you want to do. You might have seen a similar project in a neighbouring town or village and thought, well, we can give that a go here. So yeah, feasibility is a good place to start. Often quite common for grant funds to come in at this point, certainly if you're a new group or you're kind of looking to do more charitable related projects. Eventually, you'll need to convert that idea into something a bit more concrete. That's stage 2, so project development and planning permission. This is where you would take, once you've done initial feasibility, you worked out it probably is going to be viable, then you get into the detail, you bring installers in, you get professionals in to help you look at if you're doing a planning application to do ecology surveys, if it's a solar farm or other kind of bit more detailed bits that you might need to bring in expertise from beyond your group. Then this is where kind of the second phase of funding might be able to come in. Again, grants are pretty common here, but also this is you do start to see kind of loan funding coming into this space as well. Particularly in Wales, they have a revolving loan fund where yeah, community energy groups can draw on a bit of finance to do this planning phase. If the project succeeds, they then repay that loan with a bit of interest, or if it doesn't succeed, it gets written off. So it's kind of half grant, half loan. But yeah, we'll talk about that in a bit more in a minute. 3 and 4 sometimes overlap, depending on how complex a project is. But yeah, installation, obviously you're getting stuff built out, getting things plugged in and connected. If it's a smaller project, then yeah, this is probably all you need to do, just raise some money to get things kind of all generating. But sometimes when you're dealing with larger projects, you also then have a stage 4 where you might have had some interim funding to fund the build out of the project, but then you do something like a community share offer or a bond offer to then access some cheaper finance to bring in the community members to kind of share the ownership of a project and then repay any kind of investment you'd had previously to get yourself to that point. So those are kind of broadly the 4 phases of funding that we see working on projects. So as I said, we'd been working on the Rural Community Energy Fund, which was a national grant programme from the government. Unfortunately, that ended in February this year and we haven't had an equivalent follow-on scheme just yet. Some of the cities like London, Manchester, where they've got a mayoral authority, may have their own urban equivalent that is still operating. So these sorts of funds, we've now been advised by BEIS to are suitable for the Shared Prosperity Fund or the Levelling Up funds coming through certain government departments. And there's also one that's just been launched called the Rural England Prosperity Fund. So these would, as groups, you would need to access this money by working with your local authority. Every local authority in the country will have a certain amount of this shared prosperity funding allocated to them. And we have been talking with the government, and community energy development is an eligible activity under these. So you would need to have that conversation with your local authority to kind of replicate a local version of these sorts of community energy development funds. So yeah, this would be to help your groups bring in professional expertise to help with that initial feasibility and project and planning phase. And again, they can be a combination of grants or loans, but yeah, that again, the opportunities there, but you will need to work with your local authority on that one. Second one on the list is as you can see, specifically for heat related projects. There is a government unit called the Heat Networks Delivery Unit and a follow-on capital fund called the Green Heat Network Fund. So we have been managed to get some clauses in those where community scale or renewable heat projects can potentially access support. So if you've kind of proven that you have a viable community heat project through an initial feasibility study, you can then go to the Heat Networks Delivery Unit to access some more detailed design and development funding, which would then progress you on to the Green Heat Network Fund, which can then provide capital investment for laying things like district heating pipe or other capital related costs to a heat network. So you would then at that point use a blend of that government funding plus a community share equity funding to kind of finance a community heat scheme perhaps. Again, this is kind of perhaps a more complex end of the thing. So you may need to collaborate with similar community energy groups who are working on similar projects to kind of get the economies of scale or get a council to back you with a bid. Another source of national funding we've seen is kind of falls in that bridge finance category. So that's step 3 of doing the initial build out of a project. There's 2 organisations in particular, Unity and Social and Sustainable Capital. Unity are they're an energy supplier who have a good relationship with community energy groups. They often have power purchase agreements with them. And they've made £3 million available for their community energy partners to access to build out a community energy scheme. So it could be PV, a wind turbine, a hydropower project. So once you've got planning permission, you can go to them, get that money to do a quick build out, and then that would then give you the security and time to then design a community share or bond offer to refinance that project. You can actually point to it, say, we've got it built, we've got it working, and it kind of de-risks and that kind of wider fundraising for you. And Social and Sustainable Capital have a very similar kind of pot of money available to community energy groups as well. So yeah, both would be repayable, but yeah, do help projects progress on a quicker timeline than normal. And then the 4th option there, community shares and bonds. Yeah, these are very common within the community energy sector. And yeah, you see them live through crowdfunding platforms or offered directly by community energy groups as a means of everyone getting a kind of small piece of equity ownership of a shared community energy array. They often cover kind of the later stages of a project, so the kind of build out and long-term ownership of it. But as we're social enterprises, they could in theory be used for the kind of stage 1 and 2 as well. Like if you're very confident in your business model, like we have seen some examples where groups kind of raise a kind of early investor rounds from angel investors to kind of take on that riskier project development side, and that's kind of more the traditional business approach of directors or in early like venture capital people putting in money to then realize a greater gain down the road. But again, you do get social impact investors that may be also interested in kind of that riskier early stage project as well before you bring in the kind of more patient capital and members later on. So yeah, whilst we're kind of in this kind of lot of people councils now, there's a lot more greater alignment I've seen between community energy groups and councils about wanting to work together towards net zero goals. So a few creative funding options we've seen across the region as well. Some funding is started to come directly via local councils. A good example we've seen in South Cambridgeshire is where the council there are ring fencing the business rates income they receive from commercial scale onshore wind and solar farms, and then they pass that through to community energy projects within their territory, either as a grant fund for smaller projects or making some money available for more ambitious groups as well. Other councils have also started to raise money as municipal climate bonds. So this is where they maybe raise £500,000, £1 million directly from their residents to then invest onwards into renewable energy schemes within their district or borough. we're also seeing potential relationships directly between community energy groups and commercial owners of larger solar and wind farms. Historically, there was a voluntary shared ownership arrangement where solar farm developers would have to offer up a proportion of their sites for local ownership as well. So we're quite keen to talk with organisations like Solar Energy UK, Renewables UK, to see if their members would be open to this sort of arrangement going forward as well. Where if a commercial project is going forward in an area, can the community group or council take on the ownership of a chunk of that? That would then ring fence, you'd have a share of the annual profits from that site, which you can then reinvest in the schemes you want to do on a kind of a smaller scale perhaps. So we're seeing this happen hopefully in Oxfordshire and Sussex potentially as well. And I think Nicola might come in here on this final point about potentially accessing money from more corporate partners as well.
Yes, the idea I had was thinking about corporates which are, say, medium to large size. Many corporates have budgets for corporate social responsibility activity, thereby giving grants to causes that their staff care about. But these days, I wonder if it's also being geared towards carbon reduction activity, including carbon offsetting, which is a term that the commercial bodies are starting to get familiar with. I thought, well, why not work out what carbon reductions you can bring about through your project and propose that a company provides an amount as an alternative investment to carbon offsetting. Package it together with a request for staff contribution towards legal advice that you might need, marketing, accounting, etc. It could be a good use of their team building time and their professional development, and it could also make them look good. So it's worth tapping in to see what sort of appetite local corporates have got. I hope that's useful.
Okay, thank you, Nicola. And that's the end of my section as well.
Thank you very much, John. We've got some questions coming up in the chat box. Some of them are also being answered in the chat box. And for those who, and just to say, we will answer, I'll make sure your questions get asked at the very end. But I would like now to hand over to Christine Ord, who has joined us from the National Lottery Climate Action Fund. So I'm quite excited to hear what she's got to say.
Hi all, yeah, so Christine Ord I work on the Climate Action Fund, which is part of the National Lottery Community Fund. I'll go on to explain a little bit more about what the Climate Action Fund is in a moment, but I'll just share my presentation, bear with me. Is that looking okay? Yeah, great stuff. Okay, so yeah, so what I'm hoping to just run through today is just a little bit about what the National Lottery Community Fund, who they are, what they do, the Climate Action Fund, where that kind of fits within the National Lottery Community Fund and what we've done so far, and then a little bit about the energy efficiency projects that were funded, and then maybe go on to just some examples of potential funding opportunities. But it's more information about, I was just thinking about that during the presentation, mine's more information about what projects were funded, and I was thinking how potentially you could tap into those projects, because some of them are quite large and they're spread all over the UK. So especially for some of those small organisations, just having the links and the information there to know what's happening might give you a little bit more support going forward. So in terms of the National Lottery Community Fund, so we are the largest funder of community activity in the UK, and we're one of 12 distributors of money raised by National Lottery players. And we distribute 40% of all income that's played in the National Lottery goes to good causes revenue. In 2021 alone, we've awarded over £85 million of projects with an environmental element. So it's a snippet of what we're funded, but it's quite significant. So it's like just under 1,500 grants. So we have got an environment strategy, which we've been developing over the last few years. This is a three-pronged approach. Firstly, we're looking at how we improve ourselves as an organisation. So we're looking to measure, engage, communicate. We've got internal networks and how we physically get to net zero ourselves and the fund's environmental impact. Obviously, due to COVID, like the likes of transport and travel has reduced dramatically. So we're just hoping to kind of hone in on some of these things to help us get down to net zero. The second one is to continue to support charities and community groups in the sector. So this is across all of the funding across the National Lottery Community Fund, and there's different things that we've tried along the way, such as climate action top-ups in Northern Ireland and Wales, and working with the sector and grant holders. And this is really getting climate action interweaved into everything that we do, not just as an add-on. It's something that's thought about when any project comes to us with application process. And it won't be immediate, but we're working on that as we go. And then the third is committing an additional. So this is the fund that I work on. So this is the £100 million over the next 10 years. So we're 2 to 3 years in now. And this is dedicated to supporting communities to take action, impactful action in communities on climate action. So that's a program that I'm working on at the moment. Just to give you a little bit more information about the Climate Action Fund. So this is, as most of the National Lottery Community Fund, it's about empowering and inspiring local communities to take action. We're looking for people to demonstrate what is possible. So helping the communities to thrive, improving equity and diversity, responding to intersectional issues, enabling communities to work together, and really importantly, share their learning and be active participants in a broader movement of change. And we're looking to create more evidence and space for supporting policy at a local and national level, so rapid action can be taken and we've got a more resilient and equitable future. The sharing the learning bit is kind of my role here in this presentation today, and I'm hoping at the end to glean some of that from yourselves going forward. A little bit of our story so far. So in 2020, we opened up the Climate Action Fund, and this was very much place-based community-led partnerships, and we had 5 core areas, so it was quite open. So it's food, transport, energy, waste and consumption, nature and climate. So we did get some amazing projects, 23 projects across the UK. I'll come on in a moment. Quite a few of those have energy, not necessarily as the main output, but as it interconnected within the project. So that may be a good kind of point of contact for you to go to. In 2021, we're focused on a specific theme this time. So we went for waste and consumption. Amazing uptake. We had 20 projects. In the first round, we had quite a lot of full awards. So they were awards that were up to 2 million. In the second round, we thought that because the waste and consumption theme, it was just sort of generating interest. We found that we had more development awards, so they were smaller awards rather than the multi-million-pound awards. And we awarded just over £5.7 million of funding to waste and consumption projects. And we've just opened to round 3. So again, we're taking a more thematic approach to this, but this is going to be on a rolling basis. So the theme this time round is nature and climate. I'll go into a little bit about why we're doing that, but those themes are looking to change along the life cycle of this round. So I guess the best way to describe it is watch this space and kind of see what comes next. So what we're looking for in this round, I appreciate it's not entirely geared towards energy and community, but I just wanted to kind of put it out there what we've got, so you can maybe share it with your network. So we're looking at using nature to address growing climate problems, exploring food systems, less damaging to nature, creating new and accessible natural spaces in urban areas, and using creativity to engage communities with nature and climate. So again, I appreciate not directly relevant, but just to put it out there, we are looking at grant sizes. So we've got 2 strands again. The biggest one will be grant size of £1.5 million, but we're expecting those projects to be between 2 and 5 years and between 3 and 500k. We will still have development grants available. So this goes back to the feasibility type project creation projects, getting your partnerships together, and we probably fund up to about £150,000 for those, and we're accepting applications throughout the year. Types of projects, as was alluded to earlier in the call, local partnerships are absolutely what we're looking for. We are also looking for UK-wide partnerships as well this time around, which are delivered across at least 2 UK countries. So yeah, just a little bit of information. I hope that's useful. When we do send out the slides and contact details, you can always get in touch if you've got any interest in those areas. So just to come on to energy efficiency, I'm probably pointing out what you already know, but I just wanted to put across some of the kind of the debate and evidence that's pushing us forward at the moment. So unsurprisingly, energy price increases dominating the current debate on cost of living, and we're looking at what our offer in the cost of living debate looks like. Just a few points here. So citizens' advice nationally have already seen more people unable to top up their prepaid meters in this calendar year. Energy debts doubled, and they're advocating targeting people most effective. Naturally, a bit about, sorry, beg your pardon, go back. National Energy Action is calling on government to improve energy efficiency by accelerating the improvement of energy efficiency and fuel power homes. And the looking at advocating the government and committing the remaining 1.4 billion of a promised 2.5 billion on home upgrades and grant schemes. Friends of the Earth have identified energy crisis hotspots, and I've put a link there to commissioned research. And then there's this concept of warm hubs, which I'm sure many of you know about. It's grown in popularity, and it's an initiative which is originally developed by community organisations to heat communal spaces. And there's now calls for the community buildings such as libraries and museums to receive more funding to keep these buildings open. Yeah, so a little bit about what we fund. So we've funded a range of energy initiatives, household energy efficiency, supporting bulk purchase schemes, energy clubs to help generate community-owned renewable energy such as wind turbines. And in the UK, we've had a number of programs. So we've got Climate Action Fund. We've also had a program called Growing Great Ideas. And in Growing Great Ideas, this is where Energy Local came in. And so Energy Local are a CIC. They're building local power markets through local energy clubs, co-ops, which Jess will probably explain a little bit more about next. And it allows community generators to get like a true price on the energy. We've got one within the Climate Action Fund called Repowering London. Repowering London is in the borough of Lambeth and wider, and it builds community energy infrastructure. They're going to have 8 community benefit societies supported with this funding. So again, I'll put the links in and you can go through and see exactly what the breakdown of what this funding consists of. And we've got a lot of documented learning about the challenges of such projects, issues around retrofit legislation, managing capital costs, negotiating solar panels in public buildings. But a lot of our projects offer bespoke energy advice and practical support on a local level. I've put another couple of links there. We've got one in Gwynedd, I'll attempt to pronounce it, Edrefworth. And they, I think it translates into green energy, but excuse me if I'm not quite there. So they've got 4 strands. One of the strands is tackling fuel project, and they've got others around environment, food and skills. We've also got Green Meadows in Nottingham. We've got Bristol Green Capital, which Jess will speak about next. We've got a project in Middlesbrough, a project in Cumbria, a project in Kirkcaldy up in Scotland. So all of those have energy specific projects interlinked and energy efficiencies. Bear with me just a moment. So we know that energy projects can fit well within wider community aspirations to help tackle projects, and the benefit of energy efficiency is in a cost of living concern, and it will help reduce household bills quickly. So our current offer. So we do have a number of programs that look at community-focused, community-led projects that tie in community energy. So we've got Reaching Communities, which is £10,000 plus, and Awards for All, which is 10k and under. We currently don't fund specifically large energy capital projects. They generally fit in with a project delivery that is community led. So it's more about kind of people in place and how communities can get involved with that. So But with the cost of living crisis and obviously the impact of energy in this, the links do go through exactly who's eligible, who isn't eligible, all of in the criteria. But I just wanted to put this in about the kind of response to the cost of living that we know of so far. So specifically with Reaching Communities and Awards for All, who aren't part of the UK portfolio, they're part of the wider National Community Fund. We are looking at particular activities that create more fundamental change. We're looking to support people, communities and organisations that are facing increased demand and challenges as a result of the cost of living crisis, and helping organisations so they can address the immediate issues that are impacting their delivery. So I just wanted to put a little bit in there, but the links will take you through a lot more detail about the how and the what's. I just wanted to put in a little bit here as well about power to change. So you may or may not heard about this, but this is, it's not delivered by the National Lottery Community Fund, but it's backed by 20 million from ourselves with a mission to strengthen community businesses to tackle some of society's biggest challenges at a local level, including the 3 biggest challenges: climate change, digital transformation and social inequalities. So this isn't like, it's not capital funding directly, it's more around the support around businesses. So it's definitely worth taking a look if you haven't already. Sorry, I'm rattling through this. So that's what we can offer. And this is a little bit about what you can offer us, because we are still in the process of working through the cost of living increase crisis, energy efficiency mixed into this debate, but we're not in a position to provide any answers as yet, and we want to take this opportunity with yourselves to kind of initiate discussion and take feedback, whether it's in this chat or followed up with us. So just to give you an example of how we're looking for that sort of information, we're currently undergoing a strategy renewal across the business, and we're looking to help shape how the National Community Fund invests in communities going forward. So that's the big one. The UK portfolio is running alongside that and how we respond. Nick Gardner, who's head of our Climate Action Fund, is leading on an environment deep dive. So any information that you've got will help inform that piece of work. As part of the Climate Action Fund, we've got a learning and evidence framework, and we're helping to structure future learning and evidence works. We've still got 8 years left. Obviously things are changing daily, monthly, yearly, so we want to make sure that our funding's being directed in the right place, and we're gathering everything that we need to support that. So we're collecting evidence across the current cohort CAF projects and looking to share learning within and beyond the CAF programme. And so as part of these pieces of work, we'd like to invite feedback about what you would like to see in our funding going forward and how that is. So yeah, just the contact details. So we've got a phone line which you can get on the website, Climate Action Fund, and the general inquiries, you can also get those on the website. And that's me. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Christine. I will highlight that question that the Lottery Fund would like to hear about what we would like to see going forward. So I do recommend you put some comments in the chat or let Christine know when we open the space for discussion. Just before I pass over to our final speaker, Jess from Bristol Energy Co-op, I just want to re-encourage people to switch on their videos, because it's really good to see who's here, and it's encouraging for the speakers to know that people are here and not just, you know, in the bath with their laptop on or making a cup of coffee. Which is not to say if you are doing that, that's fine and great, but it is nice to see real faces and know you're not just talking to an empty space. So yeah, I just thought to say that. Oh, I've lost a couple of people having said that. I'm going to hand over to you now, Jess, and thank you. Sylvia, what has started to ask a question that's disappeared, so do keep on with your comment or question, Sylvia. Oh, and finally, Ian Davies has raised a really interesting question about PPAs in the chat box. So yeah, while Jess is getting herself sorted, I'd encourage people to respond to his question, which was about PPAs and post-FIT solar model and the current price of electricity. Jess, are you ready? You might have to unmute yourself. There she is.
Hello. Are we all happy? Can we see
Yeah,
that?
great, we can see it.
Lovely,
Great.
thank you.
Thanks.
Great. So yeah, I'm Jess Gitcham. I'm a communications manager at Bristol Energy Co-operative. We were established in 2011. We're a community benefit society with over 1,500 members. And over that time, we've raised over £15 million in funds. Now, about half of that has come from community share and bond offers. And we've just finished our 8th share offer. So we raised £1.3 million from just short of 500 investors. So it's all really fresh in our minds, and it's a really good time for us to share some of our top tips with you in case it's of any use. And this screen I just put up because one of the reasons I'm talking about share offers and sort of specialising in that right now is we, it's a great way to involve people. So, that it's getting people actively involved in community energy, which is, a nice way to raise funds. And an effective way as well. So I've got here some of the key building blocks of how, we think about our share offer campaigns. Decision making, planning obviously takes a really big chunk of it, and I've jotted down some of the key points in there. Things that are kind of obvious, other things that sometimes get a bit forgotten. Thinking about when is the best time to run a share offer, thinking about what people are facing. You can't always predict all of that stuff, but timing can be important, and that depends on your audience as well. Your registry partner, if you're using one, so we do our share offers via FX, and they manage all of the investments for us. And then putting a lot of that into the share offer document, and there's plenty of support out there, Cooperatives UK and many other providers who can help with the creation of a share offer document, and feel free to look at ours. I'm happy to share it. Just using somebody's template is another good way to go, although it's 52 pages long, I think, so not that much fun. And then a marketing plan. So there's you've got to get people involved. You've got to tell it really well. You've got to get the message out there. And as part of that, really planning the marketing elements. So what you're going to get out of it, how much money have you got, making sure you're thinking about your audience, what you're going to get across to get the hook there. And then practical elements like a press release, print advertising, a digital campaign as well. And one of the reasons that I think we've been invited, and perhaps that's turned some heads with Bristol Energy Co-op, that we've done quite well in recent years, is that we've run quite exciting and ambitious share offer campaigns. So as I think it was Nicola mentioned earlier on, trying to aim for those larger scale projects. We've wanted to really expand the amount that, aim higher. So we had share offer 7 was aiming for 2 million, and we reached that. And then this recent one, we reached the 1.3 million. So we're really going for good numbers, and that means putting a lot more into our digital campaigns in spend and effort. And I'd love to say that I've been leading on these digital campaigns, but in truth, we've actually been using a digital marketing agency called If Not Now Digital. And for that reason, I'm actually going to hand over to Chris Bettles, who heads up the agency, and he can hopefully share some nuggets of knowledge with you all that practically might help with share offer campaigns. So over to you, Chris.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jess. And yeah, just to sort of add to that, as Jess mentioned, we run digital campaigns in the social and environmental space, and we've been involved with running community energy campaigns, specifically share offers, but lots of other things to do with community energy organisations as well. For the whole time that I've worked in comms, which is about 9 years, so prior to If Not Now being set up. So we've always kind of had a finger on the pulse for these sorts of campaigns, and they've grown in ambition over the years. The work that we've done, as just mentioned, over the last couple of years for Bristol Energy Co-op has involved fundraising in the form of a crowdfund campaign, just to raise some funds to move the project along. And that was just donations. And then we've run 2 share offer campaigns alongside the Beck team, raising, I think the total of about 3.4 million in total. I thought what would be useful today is to share some of the key learnings that we've had and key recommendations or tips that we would give when it comes to running these campaigns. Some of them have true for campaigns in general, and some of them are more specific to fundraising in this space, and we've kind of pulled these together with that in mind. So I think the first thing that I would focus on is what your story is, and to be specific about that. What we have found is that whilst the story of, we're a community energy organisation and we do this, we set up community, we set up renewable energy projects and we put them into community ownership and you can buy shares. Whilst that is a good story in and of itself, people want to know specifically what their money will be funding on a project by project basis, and to say to them that they need to, although the usual setup is that people will invest in the organisation, and therefore whatever the organisation is doing across all their projects, that funding will go to help support and help them grow. Whilst that's technically true, and whilst obviously that needs to be communicated very clearly in a legal sense, from a marketing sense, from a communications point of view, people want to know about the details of a project and they want to feel like their money is going towards that specific project. So that's what we've tried to do in as many instances as it is possible to do so, and be sure to make it energetic and exciting and emotive, and not just talk about the numbers, which mean a lot to some people and very little to others. So it's good to sort of cover all bases there. Do you want to go to the next slide, please, Jess? Multiple touch points. So reaching someone once isn't always enough. It isn't often enough. And so what we aim to do with the campaigns that we run or that we partner on are to make sure that people have multiple opportunities to see the campaign and to receive different messages at different times. So that could be across social media, email, sort of bought media, ads and magazines, press coverage, etc. It varies enormously, and we wouldn't, although we're a digital agency, we would recommend having lots of non-digital touch points as well to complement those campaigns, whether that's events or online or offline or what have you. People often need reminding again and again about it, even if they're very interested in it when they first see it, then they will need to go on. Do you want to go on to the next slide, please, Jess? So yeah, getting in front of people. So something that we identified, having run many campaigns when it comes to investment, some of which are community investment, some slightly different forms of investment, higher net worth kind of investment. It is one thing to interest someone with a Facebook ad or a tweet, and it is another thing to convince them to part with their savings and invest in an organisation they may not have heard of until now, into a system that they aren't aware of, or they might not understand fully. So what we aim to do with our comms is to lead people down the funnel towards being convinced and to forming a deeper connection with the members of the organisation itself, so that they feel confident in doing it. That's not to say many people don't just see an ad and go and invest, 100, 1,000, 5,000 pounds just on off the cuff. Many people do that. We know from the data many people do that, but a lot of them need a bit more convincing, particularly those who are parting with a bit more cash, as you can imagine. So what we tend to shape our campaigns around is a system whereby we direct people to sign up to online or offline events. For obvious reasons, the last couple of years have been exclusively online, and that is a really good way to sort of speak to people directly, for them to join in a format similar to this one that we're on today, and to hear from people, to ask questions, and to get a more sense of that they understand the organisation and they trust the organisation. And yeah, as I say, this has been something we've done for a number of years, and it's continued to be a successful strategy. Go on to the next one. Yeah, so analysing results regularly. So it's very easy to get, when you've got a deadline, whether it's 3 months or 6 months or what have you, to raise a certain amount of money. You set a plan, you get very wrapped up in the delivery, and you just keep doing as much as you possibly can all the time. But if you're not careful, and if you don't look at the results that you're getting, not just in terms of how much is being raised, but the amount of people that are starting the investment process and not finishing, or the amount of people that are visiting the page in question, the landing page on whatever website it is, or signing up to your newsletter, or the number of people you're reaching on social media, things like that. If you don't understand all that, it's very easy to keep putting a lot of effort into things that actually aren't working, and equally not to put the effort into the things that are actually working better. So keeping an eye on what's happening and working out, you know, how many people you're having to reach, and to get X amount of people to go through to a page, to get X amount of people then to invest. It gives you a sense of what resource you're going to have to dedicate moving forwards, and what strategies might be more useful to you as you go forwards. And the next one. So audience, yeah, so we've said analyze, categorize, and prioritize. So assumptions are fine when it comes to audiences. You know, we can assume that most of our audience will be this kind of person, and they'll live in this kind of area, etc., etc. But we shouldn't rely on them alone. We want to base our results on what we're actually seeing. So make sure you're looking at who is already signed up, and who are engaging with your comms, who are expressing interest in the campaign, and then also thinking about what is different about them. There are usually lots of different people that take part. As you said, over 500 new members in the most recent campaign that we've run. There's a diverse range of people that fall within that, and we can usually group them into certain sort of types that might respond better to certain messages, or might be more likely to invest. And then we've got to prioritize. So one common distinction with community energy is those who are happy, like love the projects, are completely sold on the ethos, but don't have very much to invest. They might invest £100, a couple of £100, which is wonderful. We want lots of people to be to invest in the projects and to be members of projects, whether or not they invest a large amount of money, part of the sort of the democratic ethos of community energy. But also, if you get, you know, a couple of hundred people invest £100, that doesn't get you very far towards your £2 million target. And so you need to kind of think about, well, okay, we do want to target some people who are not going to have a lot of money, but we want to be careful how much resource we dedicate to that, because ultimately we have to hit our targets, financial targets as well, in order to
yes, I'm just going to interrupt you for a moment, because I'm really conscious we've gone over time. So I just want to speed you up a bit.
Yeah, of course. I will rush through the next couple of slides. I think there's only a couple more.
Thanks.
There we go. Paid social media ads. So they are absolutely vital. I kind of wish they weren't sometimes. They are extremely complicated, and they can cost a fair amount of money sometimes, but they are extremely efficient for the money spent on them, and we really couldn't run campaigns without them. I don't think anywhere near the efficacy that we currently do. Go through to the next one, Jess. Influencers and advocates. So making sure that you are finding people who already support you, who have an influence, and that you can tap into that and ask that they share your content. And equally continuing to look for new influencers and advocates over time, or that can become advocates over time, building these connections and relationships, because when it comes down to a campaign, you will need their support to help spread the word about your campaign. And is there one more? I think this is the final one. So content, always have opportunities for content in mind. It can be very easy to kind of not think about creating video, capturing photography, developing things like infographics until it comes down to the point that you want to raise funds. And that can often mean a lot of energy, a lot of time, a lot of complication at the start of getting ready for that campaign. So whether it is video, photography, animation, whatever, it's good to think about opportunities to do that and to keep going with that over time, so that by the time it comes to fundraising, you've got a nice bank of content to go from. And I will finish there because I'm conscious of time. But yeah, I hope that was really helpful, and I'll check my email on the chat in case anyone's got any follow-up questions for that.
Thanks so much, Chris. Yeah, very good overview of managing a social media campaign, which I think many of us probably need some help with. So thanks for that. I'm gonna, yeah, I've opened the questions now, and I'm starting with Nigel from Norwich Community Solar, who's asked quite a lot of questions. But Nigel, I'd like to suggest you start with your first question, which was about local authorities. And I imagine that will be for Nicola and Laura. And maybe there are people from local authorities here as well who can answer.
Okay, thanks, Liz. Can everybody hear me all right? Yeah, great. So yes, I'm very interested in the community energy pathway scheme that's been piloted in the south of England through Community Energy South, and very keen to see this spread to Norfolk County Council. So for those local authorities here, if you have any top tips on how we can get our local county councillors onto this programme and back it with some serious money, as I believe we're talking millions in your case, how do you go about that?
Nicola and Laura, can either of you answer that? And I think I saw somebody from Hampshire County Council here. Laura, I have to ask you to check that.
I'll check that. Nicola, were you going to say something?
Yes, we are actually being funded to explore taking our Pathways programme to areas way beyond the south. So you may well find that it does come to you, but what I can do is make a note that you're interested and we can add it onto our possible list. Thank you.
Just to add to that, as I said at the beginning, we're fortunate in Hampshire to be sponsored from central government funding, which was the Communities Renewal Fund, which is now morphed into the Shared Prosperity Fund. I know that a number of local authorities have been looking at using their Shared Prosperity Fund allocation to direct towards community energy activities within their area. It's not easy, and these are conversations. You'll have to have a champion at your local authority in order to help shape those bids, because it's a case of bidding for a pot of money at a county level. If you do have good contacts at your local authority, I urge you to get them to think about using that fund. And there's also levelling up funding that's coming up. Although, you know, we seem to be in a bit of a state of flux at the moment regarding priorities and funding within this country, but a levelling up funding is certainly a way that you can channel funding into community energy. But yeah, I think it's just a case of having a champion within your local authority. I'm sure there's people within Hampshire and other local authorities that would be happy to share what their sort of priorities have been and how they managed to shape those bids, if that would be of interest.
Absolutely, yes. And please, I'll put my email address in the chat so that Nicola, if you want to get in touch, then I can act as a sort of go-between, perhaps.
I will. Thank you very much. That'd be great. It would also be really useful for. I'm assuming you may have looked through the authorities' net zero plans to see what opportunity they've already identified that community energy could respond to. So yeah, let's pick up that discussion.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to pass it's not the second question that came up in the chat box, but because, you know, we're very much about enabling everyone, I'd like to invite Georgie to ask the next question. I'm not quite sure who your question's for. I imagine Nicola, again, Nick and Laura will be in a good place to respond.
Hi, thanks for unmuting me. Yes, I've jumped onto this. I feel a slightly bit of imposter because we really are at kitchen table level. We are based in I'm in Cookfield in West Sussex, and it's about a population of 3,000 to 4,000, so say 3,500 people, and it's an affluent community. However, somebody put me on contact with Community Heat in Barkham that have got quite a lot of input and support in there being one of the first villages to start a community heat programme and get it as a blueprint for others to use. However, it seems to be sort of trundling along and I'm not quite sure what's happening. And myself and some others in the community felt that perhaps Cookfield could step forward in that respect and either set it up themselves or join forces with Barkham, or perhaps take over their place. At the moment, we're setting up a blueprint of how these large projects get off the ground. So my question is, I'm very much at kitchen table level of the very initial discussions. I know very little about this topic, and it's very much a learning through Mr. Google and yourselves, thank you. So it's really to know what are my next steps, or my real primary steps from moving from a kitchen table discussion with some residents who are very keen to see something happen with regard to getting Cookfield off-grid, shall we say, or sustainable. What are my sort of primary objectives to start?
Shall I step in with the answer to that
Nikki
one?
here from Community, so she's probably best placed to answer your question there.
Yeah, I suggest Nicola starts because of the pathways mentoring, and then Nikki can.
Sure.
And then just ask me to comment when you like me to.
Brilliant, thank you. We are starting to look in your area, Georgie, about strategically about how community energy can respond and how the Pathways programme might fit in that area. It will take a few months, but it's definitely on our radar, and we are in conversation with the authority there, looking at their net zero plans and looking at how projects like Community can respond. Nikki will probably tell you about the first project that has emerged from Community and is now hopefully going to be blueprinted into other areas. Nikki, would you like to carry on?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Georgie. I think we have a meeting scheduled on Monday, don't we?
Yes, I suddenly the penny suddenly
yes,
dropped.
I know. I was like, oh, it's Georgie.
I'm really excited about that. Yes, thank you.
So we'll be able to tell you. Ollie is very keen. Ollie Pendred is very keen to join that meeting as well, so we can really dive into a lot more detail about Community. Very briefly, Community was funded via UK Power Networks to look at what it would look like for a community to have a planned transition from fossil fuel heating to electric heating. And that first project has now come to an end, and we're actually applying for funding to really expand that initial project to other clusters of villages. And to deep dive into a few villages. We've also been working with a community called Littlebury in Essex in the Uttlesford district. We've been working with them to implement what we call Kickstart, which is a kind of precursor to a much bigger project, Community, to start to engage with the community and also to see how the community feels about transitioning, to see if there's a there, because the Community project is a kind of ground up project rather than somebody coming along and telling people what to do. It's about seeing how it would look like to enable a community to transition, to say what does a community need in order to transition, and how can UK Power Networks make that power, basically grid, available for that community if they want to transition.
So it's basically what I'm hearing is that just start having a conversation with yourself, which I've arranged next week. I've arranged a conversation the next day with the local parish, with a view to having a meeting with the local parish council at the end of the month. So it's a sort of a slow step-by-step approach, but speaking with yourselves and your group and understanding more about it is a good first step, would you suggest?
Yes, I would say definitely, because we can tell you what we have done, and then we can put you in touch with the right people who could possibly mentor, or at least kind of show you the way to really get your community together to form a group.
That sounds really good.
And I think Laura want to say something?
Yeah, Laura wants to say something. And then Eve, would you like to ask the next question? And then after Eve, Ian Davies.
So to kind of address the what you were talking about, Georgie, from moving from the kitchen table onwards into the next stages, it's also worth thinking about what point you constitute yourself and form some sort of registered society that will then enable you to open a bank account, which is often a very lengthy process and can be kind of a blocker in terms of being able to raise funds, unless you have a parish council that's supportive. And I know other groups have worked closely with their parish council, and parish councils have been able to make funding applications on their behalf and are able to use their sort of mechanisms and bank accounts. But it's worth bearing in mind about scheduling. It's quite a quick process to form a community benefit society. If you've got a really key group of founding members, the lengthy process is then setting up a bank account. And sometimes with funding rounds, you've got a deadline and you haven't managed to set up a bank account in order to take advantage of that. That's a big frustration. So it's worth thinking about that in order to.
That's fantastic. Thank you. That's really useful, actually. One of those things hadn't even occurred to me. So absolutely, yeah, because it's a long process potentially. Okay, thank you.
Eve.
Hi, yeah, thank you. No, that was definitely what I thought. That's a really good idea. Working with a few communities, we'll just get those set up with a legal identity now before we go any further. I had a couple of questions relating to earlier presentations. I've written an awful lot of notes. I'm not paperless here this morning. So the first question really is across different partners. And it's a broad question. It's about what size are communities. Now, I realise we've talked about various distinctly different types of projects, whether they're those, I think one of them called the sort of low-level measure partnerships. But if we're talking about generation, or we're talking about making significant difference and getting something funded, what type of size of community would you be looking at? That probably is to someone like John. And to the second person who presented.
I could chip in. I could chip in. John's actually left, but community energy projects can work on various sizes of group. Made Energy, for example, we cover a population size of 200,000 or more. We find that is quite a good sort of population size from which to draw founding members and volunteers. If you're looking at just a village, that's a very small number to draw people from. You'd have to have a lot of very interested people within your group to push something forward on that. So I would go bigger. I would also look at networking, so working with your neighbouring towns, neighbouring villages, for example. Does that help?
Yeah, it does. I mean, we talked about a range of projects here, haven't we? So yeah, for the broader projects, I see that works, and we've already got a big network operational. So I think we can transfer something into that sort of size. I was more thinking about specific generation. So when we're looking at generation projects, what type of size were you?
Okay, if you're thinking about rooftop solar, you need to be looking at a very large new roof for it to be economically viable now without the feed-in tariff. The next project, the first project we did at Made Energy without the feed-in tariff was 107 kilowatt production, and that was on our new leisure centre. And that worked out really well and is proving to be really financially viable. So I wouldn't personally go anything less than 100 kilowatts.
Fine, okay, fine. So just one more, because it might be useful for other people just to hear one sort of in embryonic stage. If I was looking at a large care home, a range of almshouses, a private household community that also want to be part of it, and a big field, is that a community?
Yes, that sounds very exciting. That sounds like a lot of assets that you could utilise.
Yeah, they're all geographically bounded. So and they're ready to go, and they've got funding. So we just
you'd have to make sure to be the most economically viable, you'd want to make sure that the energy you would generate would be more or less the same as the energy you would utilise. Otherwise, you're looking at exporting, which is a lesser price.
It's a care home with really high energy needs because they're all vulnerable. Everything's electronic, so I think we could do that. Thank you.
If they've got a good roof, that sounds really interesting.
All right.
Or a good field, even better.
Just to add to that, Eve, it's a good point, and I think people's definitions of communities hugely vary, and it needs to be quite flexible. In Hampshire, and I see Kat from Energise South Downs here. It's something we have discussed at length. Is how small a community makes a viable group, and kind of with Energise South Downs, it encompasses a wide range of communities across the South Downs, because there's kind of realisation that for more efficient groups and being able to leverage in more people, more resources, more volunteers, more potential investors and more sites, it was better to sort of go across and be more like an umbrella organisation that reaches across communities, but you've still got community-led groups like local climate action groups at a village level. But for a community energy group, it might be more efficient, more effective to sort of pull communities together under an umbrella group, which is what Energise South Downs have done.
That's really helpful. Thank you, Laura. That's sort of given me a nice Venn diagram to go at.
Thanks. So great questions. It's lovely to be able to see people ask a question, get some really solid guidance in the answers. Ian Davies, you've got, I think, 2 or 3 questions. I'm not quite sure who's going to answer the one about PPAs. But so do ask your questions. And then Nick Owens, I think you wanted to ask a question after that. Ian, are you still here? Hang on a minute. Right, what's happening here? Okay, in that case, I'm going to hand over to Nick Owens.
Okay, thank you. Firstly, a comment. My community energy group, HKD Energy, covers 4 villages, and our scope covers a population of about 15,000. But as a community group, we're pretty small, and we're probably struggling on the bounds of viability. So I would definitely recommend going for a bigger area. My question is a general one to Community Energy South, which is, do you know if Mid Sussex District Council has any interest in funding or working with energy groups? I've not discovered any from them at the moment.
Oh,
I think, oh, Nicola, you go.
Yeah, I'm wondering, can you remind me which county that is in?
It's in West Sussex.
West Sussex. We are in conversation with West Sussex. Laura, do you want to pick up?
Yeah, we're going to be working with West Sussex over the autumn and winter at a kind of county level to help guide their thinking into how they might be able to support community energy and what needs to be done to help best deliver that. So I think it's a case of watch this space potentially, and we're hoping that out of that strategic work it will filter down to the district authorities. So we've not had specific, as far as I know, we've not had specific discussions with any of the local district authorities within West Sussex, but I'm sure this will be happening shortly.
Okay, thank you.
Sylvia.
We've been taking advice about size because we've been told that the grid capacity to absorb more energy is one of the big rate limiting steps, and it's not going to be upgraded in any shape or form until about 2028, 2030. So the advice we've been given so far is to aim for something like 1 megawatt. About 2 hectares of farmland if we won't go that path. I just wonder whether anybody else had picked anything else up about that limiting step. The other half of that is that it wouldn't cost the government very much to actually upgrade the grid so it could take more capacity. It would cost the equivalent of rescuing Bulb. The cost, so that's the sort of debate that's going on at national level, I suspect, but at local level we've been advised that aiming small is good. Thanks.
Can I just say a quick word that's because we're working with UK Power Networks, which I don't believe is in your area, Sylvia, for exactly that reason, because they're realizing that, you know, the future needs don't match up to current grid, and to work with the community in order to plan that future need is exactly what our project is about. Right. You know, it's also, you know, so they can see how they can keep the grid as small as possible in order to save money, because ultimately it all comes back on our bills. So Ofgem is very keen that they always look at the most economic way of doing things while transitioning.
The other sort of related part of the advice we're looking at anyway is that in universities, different parts of the departments of a university have different energy meters, but they're considered as one generator if they put energy on more than one roof. And there's a there's a piece of work, I think, going on to find out whether a village could be considered in the same way, that you could add together a multi-site generator. It's been done, I think, in Wales with water power, but and it's been done in universities, but it might be a solution for villages.
Martin's made some comments. Martin Heath has made some comments in the chat box, and I'm inviting him to unmute himself and comment, because I was going to say something similar. So Martin, go ahead.
Perhaps if I put my microphone down, that's better. Yeah, I'm just thinking, responding to grid constraints, which are always a problem, but not insurmountable by any means. And, in early conversations with the grid operator, it's always helpful. And also, I was just going to make the point that the whole idea, and Nicola not more than touched upon this, is the idea is not to export electricity if you possibly can. So if you can deliver all of the electricity on site or to a local site, then you can get around the grid export constraints by not exporting. And if you do have any constraints on export, it's not such of a financial hit as it would be if you were trying to export 30 or 40% of the electricity. So the aim is trying to get as much electricity used on site. That makes grid constraints a lot easier to deal with. The other point I was going to make, a 1 megawatt site or project is quite a big project for a startup community energy organisation. That's big. We're talking perhaps £1 million, well, £800,000 worth of investment. 100 kilowatts may be a much better place to start, i.e. £100,000. And also, of course, at those lower levels, grid capacity constraints are much easier to deal with. But those are the points I was making.
Thanks, Martin. I have to say, Sylvia's not looking in the least bit daunted.
Not good. Yeah, if you could do for £1 million. I mean, other people have done it. I mean, West Solent did I think a 2 megawatts site, and so did Westmill as well, which I think was 5 megawatts plus a wind farm. They can be done.
Where is Great Baker, Sylvia?
It's in Wiltshire, and just between Marlborough and Hungerford.
And have you spoken to the network operator yet?
Yes and no. We've done it through somebody, but not properly, not formally. We're still at a very, very early stage.
Okay. No, well, I think it's worth having lots of informal chats with them. My experience at CES of engaging with UK Power Networks and SSEN is they're really open. They seem to be quite open for informal chats and advice. Maybe other people here may have had different experiences, but yeah, message us afterwards if you want to make more contact. I'm going to mute myself because it's very noisy outside. Are there any more questions? Or are we done? Oh, Katrina, go ahead.
It was just about the solar farms really, and being at scale, so that if you are exporting, then an energy company would be interested in buying, and therefore it's a financially viable model. Does anyone know what the minimum solar farm size would be to make sure it's a financially viable model if it's all been exported and can't be used locally?
Looks like Nigel's got an answer.
Obviously, it's a very difficult question to answer because it would depend upon any financial arrangement between the generator and the power off-taker, not to mention whether or not you can get, as we've been talking about, the grid connection. Firm grid connections are one thing. In the UK Power Networks jurisdiction, they may connect you, but it'll be under what's known as active network management, whereby they can curtail you if the grid capacity becomes zero headroom. But to get to the question, I mean, these days, subsidy-free commercial farms usually kick off quite high, 10 megawatts plus, I would hazard a guess at being what you need to think about, which has already been said is an extremely large project for a community energy group. You're much better off, as people have been talking about, using the energy locally and avoiding connection export to the grid as far as possible, especially with the prices of electricity as they are today.
Thank you. And or doing the other thing that Nicola had suggested, Nicola's had to leave sadly, which was linking, you know, make sure you've got, as Laura has said, make sure you've got your vehicle ready, your CBS or your IPS, make sure you've got your vehicle ready. So if a commercial project wants to come in and do a project in your locality, you're there to say, make some of it community owned, and you've got your vehicles so they can get going using you, and you benefiting from them too. Are there any more questions? We're definitely coming to the end of our hour and a half, but Nigel's got something else to say, and you better wave madly at me if you also have something to say.
Yeah, Liz, just to add to that last comment of yours about commercial farms and not being open to shareholding from the local community, which is a common model, by the way, in places like Denmark and Germany. But for some reason, it hasn't been in evidence very much here in the UK that local people are actually given the option to become part owners of a commercial renewable energy establishment, whether it's a solar farm or a wind farm. However, there is a piece of legislation I want to bring to people's attention, because I think this could be our key to opening up that opportunity, and it's called the Infrastructure Act of 2015. And if you read section 38 and 39 of that act, it speaks directly to the opportunity for communities to engage in part ownership of a commercial renewable energy generator, where in fact it may not even be renewable energy for that matter. But the problem at the moment, it seems, is that it's through the go-ahead has to be given by the Secretary of State. So what I would encourage people to do is to become familiar with this kind of legislation, which in a way gives us a right to buy into a new development of that nature. And also, I think is our bargaining chip here is that if local communities are starting as they are to show resistance, including the Prime Minister for that matter, to large solar farms being developed, then they could sweeten the deal and open the pathway to that through offering community part ownership. At least it's a difficult way to go, because a lot of commercial developments are developed and then flipped into corporate portfolios. But I still think it's possible, if we were to raise pressure, to get that act reviewed as it is due to be right now, in fact.
I think that's a great idea, Nigel, and maybe we should do a webinar on it. That's what I'm thinking. Yeah. And
sure.
So we can all get a little bit better informed. Nicola, thank you so much. Jess, thank you so much. Chris, thank you so much. Laura, thank you so much. And John and Christine, who've already left, thank you all so much for your contributions. And I hope all of you who've joined have found this helpful. You can save the chat box if you're still here by clicking on the 3 little dots at the bottom of the chat box, and that way you can save what's there and save all of the links, and save emails addresses that are put in there. And I will send out the recording later on once it takes a while for it to convert, but once it's converted, we'll send out the recording and all of the presentations. So thank you everyone for joining, and maybe see you next month. Cheers.